Hey everybody, Mr. P here. It's Thanksgiving, and if you're anything like me, that means just one thing: dessert. Unfortunately for us, Chef Poindexter's over at school, and he's going to show us how to make an apple spice cake with a brown sugar glaze. Let's go see.
All right, so we're gonna get started. I've already weighed out all of my ingredient, and we will include the recipe so that you guys can participate alongside. Starting off in the mixing bowl, I have my butter, my granulated sugar, so the white sugar, and some lemon zest. And so step one you're gonna wanna do is cream those things together. So I'm gonna take these three different items and try to make them into a smooth paste. The recipe says to add in all the sugars, but I'm going to hold back on the brown sugar for a little bit because brown sugar has moisture in it. It has molasses added. That's why it's brown. And so what I don't want is this to break down, because once these things start to separate and liquid comes out, you can't put it back together. All right. So if you're going to cream these, you're going to want to do it on high. So slowly get it up to speed and then crank it up. And this definitely works best with butter that's room temperature. So this has been sitting out for a while, but it is still a little bit cold. You don't want to melt the butter, so don't do that. All right, now that I can see that it's kind of pulled together, I am now gonna add in my brown sugar and get that going as well. Never scrape too much, and always make sure you scrape down. Anything that's stuck inside of our attachment, make sure you get that out. Cool. All right, so now that we have creamed all of our sugars together with our butter and some of that lemon zest, we're going to emulsify in our eggs. So we're going to add them one at a time. I've already cracked all of them. This is the best way to do it. So pretty much you're just going to eye it by trying to get one yolk in at a time. I've also added my vanilla to this mixture as well. So started on low. Okay. It is important that you do one egg at a time. If you don't, it won't emulsify and it won't hold together. And then your end result is going to be really chunky and weird, a weird texture, and it can also alter the flavor. Okay. Once that egg has disappeared, go ahead, add in another. All right, and then last egg in. So you guys can see the mixture has changed. It's no longer like a dough clump. It's kind of loosened up a little bit. And go ahead and scrape that again. It's easier to move around. It's more of a paste now. Okay. Now that that's all come together, we're going to add in our dry ingredient. So this consists of all-purpose flour. We've got some nutmeg, allspice, ground clove, cinnamon, baking soda, and some salt. I would not add all this at once. You don't want your flour to kind of splash everywhere. So a little bit in at a time. Start low. At this point, you should smell all of those wonderful spices. All right, I'm gonna add in my apples and the lemon juice now. Make sure you guys squeeze as much of the juice out of the apples that you can. Otherwise, the cake will end up being way too moist. It'll fall apart and not stay together. If you wanted to add the walnuts into the recipe, you totally can. After this has kind of all come together, I would mix for 30 seconds at most, adding the walnuts into this batter, and then going from there. We're gonna roast them today though and put them on as a garnish instead. All right, so as you guys can see, it's a little bit thicker than some cake batters, so it's not gonna really pour out for you, so you're gonna have to scrape. Take your spatula, or if you have an offset spatula, and just kind of spread it around so it's in the pan evenly. All right, if you can, since this is a thicker batter, try to push to the edges. And then, there you go. And you stick it in the oven. Our oven temp is 325 degrees, which is why it's gonna take a little bit longer to bake than most cakes do. All right, so now we're going to make our brown sugar glaze. So obviously one of the ingredient is going to be brown sugar. So in this pot, I've got butter, brown sugar, heavy cream. I've got a pinch of salt, as well as some lemon juice and some vanilla. So what you want to do is put this on heat. You're trying to melt that butter as well as the sugar. You want the sugar to completely disappear to the point where you can't see it anymore. And you're gonna kind of let it bubble just a little bit. Remember, heavy cream has a lot of fat in it. So if it starts to boil, that means that your cream is going to start to burn and scorch to the bottom. So that means your heat is too high. So we're looking for a medium to a medium high heat until we start to see some of those bubbles form. It should turn into a nice brown sauce that's very pourable. We're looking for this to be a smooth brown color. It should be very similar to that of a caramel. It's not going to be as sticky, but that's what we're working with. Because really, this is a form of caramel, but we're using brown sugar instead of granulated sugar. So we're looking for that same consistency that you guys are used to seeing with caramel, whether it's the sauce or the candy. All right, that butter is going to give it a nice sheen. Food is very important, especially during the holidays in my family. My grandmother does all the cooking, and she doesn't have a single recipe written down, and it bothers me because I don't know what she does, and I can never get my stuff to turn out the same way that hers does. And she's always just, I just add a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't work. Like, I need to know the secrets. I ended up going to culinary school, but before that, it was kind of one of my brother and I's chores. We were both responsible for, we each had 2 nights a week that we had to prepare dinner once we were in high school. And so that was where I first started cooking, using my dad's recipes and his instructions of, what to do. And then I went to culinary school and got a degree in baking and pastry arts. And I've been working, my first job was in a restaurant, and that's pretty much all I've known is, restaurant work or being surrounded by food and culinary arts. So. All right, so we now have our 8-inch round that is done baking. I think last time we talked about the 10-inch. That one took a little bit longer. So this one's cooled down a little bit. I went through the edges. It's kind of, as it cooled down, it's separated from the pan, but I still tried to scrape. So fingers crossed that when I flip this onto the plate that it actually works. So let's see what we've got. All right. Okay, that's a good sound. Oh, look at that. That is a thing of beauty right there. All right, so, at this point, everything's pretty much done. All you gotta do is, put your toppings on, so that's what we're gonna do. We've got our toasted walnuts. Remember, you only wanna toast these for, a handful of minutes. All right, sprinkle those however you want. And then you take your glaze, you can spoon it on or pour it on. We're gonna pour a little bit. And then since we didn't spoon it, we can kind of take our offset, kind of push it out so it kind of runs down the edges. And then you just cut and serve. Enjoy.